Kathy has a lot of expertise in the area of editing, and so very pertinent, given that it's in the timing as far as starting submissions for a contest. But beyond that, she's an author and an illustrator, because she's published two children's books, Where Does This Line Go and Dance Cat. And so yeah, the written word and fine art, and editing other people's works. And so being an author gives her, to me, the two key components of being a good editor, which is empathy and expectation. Because if you don't have both those things, you're gonna just make people cry and burn their work and never want to come back to the page. And also you're going to let people slide on things that they need to tighten up. So yeah, and she, in short, she knows of what she speaks. So please attend well to what Kathy has to say. Very timely, and yeah, don't want to miss any of the bon mots.
Thank you, Dan. I just want to make sure. Okay, I think I've agreed to everything on my screen that I have to agree to. So thank you, Dan. I think that's a lot, giving me a lot of credit. But I enjoyed being the Sage editor a lot, and I've always enjoyed being an editor. It's especially for publications, because there's always something going on. And I want to say thanks to the now 39 people who've decided to attend this talk. There's a no-no in writing that I'm sure you're all aware of, that is about opening a story with your protagonist doing something completely boring, like eating the same breakfast he ate yesterday, or drooling in his sleep, or brushing his teeth, or giving a talk about publication guidelines. I thought about how boring this topic is while I was stalking on Facebook. I've seen some of you there. Some of us are friends, and others I see posting on the SouthWest Writer site and other writing sites. But within the past few months, I joined a Facebook group that's called the Dull Women's Club. Now, if I could see you, I would ask if any of the rest of you are aware of the Dull Women's Club, or its counterpart, the Dull Men's Club, which I actually think came first. Here are some screenshots from the Dull Women. I guess the Dull Women decided that they wanted their own forum, although I don't really understand that, because there's still a lot of cross-posting and cross-discussion between the two. The interesting thing about both of these dull groups is that they seem to be an attempt for people to out-dull each other. And since I've now confessed to being your classic Facebook stalker, it's fine that you should know that I haven't actually posted anything to either group. But when I was lurking about the other day, I realized that this talk might be something dull enough to get their attention and to rank me up there with the most dull of all. So I have huge expectations for the success of this talk. There's no doubt about it. Publication guidelines are boring, and a talk about them has to be one of the dullest subjects in all of SouthWest Writers history. But as you can see by the top line up there, even a group whose entire purpose is to mitigate excitement has rules. And to be part of the group, you're expected to follow the rules. And we all have heard now about how Facebook and other groups are starting to actually make more rules in order to make it easier to get rid of people who are offensive in some way or simply don't understand. In addition to being boring, I find the guidelines annoying. Sometimes they're hard to understand, and they're even nerve-wracking. For me, confronting the guidelines induces actual panic, because I was an editor And that means that I've wielded these guidelines from the other side. I know just how easy it is to reject the work of writers who don't follow them. Okay. But no matter how we all fear, despise, or snooze over the guidelines, they're important. These are the main points bulleted here that I hope to cover tonight. So I'm not going to read them, but it's just so you can get a glimpse of what we'll hopefully get to discuss. What I'd like to start with is, who creates the guidelines anyway? Is it this demon? Maybe. But actually, it's humans. It's humans who are just trying to get their job done. I do think that there's a pervasive opinion among writers and among the people who are trying to get their work published that guidelines exist to sort out the great writers from the less than great writers. But to be honest, that's a huge misconception. In the world of publishing, good writing isn't actually the pinnacle of achievement. It's just the beginning. Good writing is the minimum, I will say that again, the minimum requirement for entry. Your awesome talent and your practiced writing skill does not guarantee publication. Every time you submit, it might be helpful to think of the guidelines as a job interview. If you can follow these instructions and you prove that you can do the job the way that your potential paycheck wants it done, you may be in. But if instead your submission hits the agent or the editor's desk in one of the 150 or so more fonts that are on your computer that are not the Times New Roman or Palatino that they've requested, your work is literally, empathy notwithstanding, it's trash to them. You need to be able to prove that you can format what you've written to their precise specifications. And can you do it to their deadline? Once you've shown yourself reliable to the publication standard and you're talented enough to make money for them, the rules might relax a bit for you. You might get away then with handing stuff in a little past the deadline. You might be forgiven for having margins a quarter inch off the standard, or for using your favorite font instead of boring Times New Roman. But even then, I wouldn't count on it. That's because the publisher's focus is only, honestly, about 40% on finding and keeping the best writers. Here's what actually happens. Poor writers are spotted within the first sentence or two of their submission. Rejection letter sent. Great writers are rare. They get a little more attention because, of course, they're sought after. Their words can send editors into emotional fits. But if you happen to be one of those great writers who also insists that your creativity is offended by the presence of rules, guess what? Rejection letter sent. These writers, no matter how talented they are nearly as likely to remain unpublished as poor writers. Mediocre writers are a dime a dozen, with new ones pouring from creative writing classes daily. Yet this group is where the real competition lies. The less than greats are duking it out for book, magazine, and online publishers to notice them and their work. And the ones most likely to call positive attention to themselves are those who follow the guidelines to a T. Mediocre or not, these are the writers in the best position to propel themselves to the top of the publishing heap. And this is good news for most of us. Bad, great, or mediocre writers who can't or won't follow the guidelines might as well light a match and use their pages to warm themselves on a winter's night. So, are you a rule follower? Are you a rebel? I know everyone wants to think that they're a rebel, but personally, that won't get you published. I have to confess that one of my pet peeves is successful writers who come around and talk about how they've disregarded the guidelines, or in many cases, even the rules of common courtesy, and they still got their work published. I'm not going to say it's impossible to push through work that is handwritten and mailed to Penguin without an agent, but that work had better hit the editor over the head, and you'd better be able to successfully convince them it's a timely and financially worthwhile bestseller. Maybe you are the rebel. Are you one of those whose name alone will get you published? If so, you are definitely exempt from the guidelines. If not, stay with me, because for you, the guidelines are not a suggestion, they are the rules. And to have any hope in a handbasket of getting published by magazines, online or print, winning a contest, or landing a book deal, you need to know where to find the guidelines. Google. Every publication on the planet has published guidelines for submission. Some of them are simpler than others. Some of them are as simple as don't contact us without an agent. No other guidelines given. But then there's Chicken Soup. Chicken Soup is they help you. They help you a lot to get your submissions published. Their guidelines are incredibly easy to find, and they're easy to comply with. My first time submitting to Chicken Soup was a huge surprise. I believe that they have one of the easiest processes in all of publishing. So when I wanted to find Chicken Soup, and this is how easy it is really to find any of them, but if I wanted to find Chicken Soup, you can see in the search bar there that I searched Chicken Soup for the Soul. And what came up was this page. And down here to the middle, you can see where it says submit your story. This is where you want to start to find the guidelines for Chicken Soup. So you click there, and that takes you to this page, how to submit. So this page for Chicken Soup is actually their submissions page. If you go down farther on this page, you'll see their actual upload for submissions. But what we're really interested in is the guidelines. And lo and behold, their second bullet is story guidelines. But it's available on in two different places on this page. You'll also see in the second paragraph, please visit our story guidelines page. So you click on one of those, and that takes you to this page, guidelines for Chicken Soup of the Soul story. So surprisingly, 7 bullets is really nothing for a publication's guidelines. And if you look, it's not all about formatting your work as far as how it looks on the page, what kind of font you use, what the margins look like. It's Chicken Soup really wants to make a point that what they're looking for is heartwarming stories. I think it's number 2. Yes. Tell your story in a way that will make the reader cry, laugh, get goosebumps, or say, wow. Now, to me, that's a pretty awesome guideline. And I really enjoyed reading it because it tells you not necessarily what the mechanics of your work has to be, but what the feeling of your work has to be. And I think for writers, sometimes it's just nice to take a breath and go, wow, it's about a feeling. So it's good. And then they also tell you down there what chicken soup for the soul story is not. This is also another way of helping you to really understand what they're looking for. And it's also pretty unique in publishing. Going down further, you'll see that they have a few more tips about publishing. And they do get a little more detailed, and I missed it on the previous page. They do tell you that they want you to keep your submissions to 1,200 words, but that's really their only real constraint on your page. They say on this page that they don't want you to send them any book manuscripts. They're not in the business of publishing your book. They're only publishing stories in their books. They're like an anthology. They're literally an anthology. And they don't want anything that has been previously published. This should be a tip-off that they do want the first rights of publication to your work, and they're probably going to have you sign a release for that. They do pay. I think there's a page coming up here. They don't pay here. Yeah, the note. We do not pay for submissions. We only pay for stories that we publish. However, they do pay pretty well. So that's it for chicken soup. Honestly and truly, it's rarely that easy. So we're gonna go on to the next. So just because chicken soup is easy, I don't want you to think that other guidelines are so hard that it feels like the purpose of them is to trip you up on your way to getting published. Because to be honest, the entire publishing industry, in my opinion, has become a lot easier and a lot more compassionate with its writers than it was 20 years ago. I do think that part of that is because of the popularity of self-publishing. And these publishing houses know that on some level, to get the good writers, they may have to compete with that. And so they're working really much harder than they used to make it a friendlier environment. And I mentioned self-publishing. Even self-publishing comes with guidelines. I'm sure at least a few of you are familiar with the pages of guidelines and instructions associated with self-publishing on KDP Amazon's site. This is one single page that happened to be on my computer from KDP Amazon. The only thing you learn on this page is how many pages your book must have depending on its size and shape. So basically you learn that if you want your book to be a 5x8 size, for most of its requirements, your book must be at least 24 pages, and it can't be more than 828. If you just want to use standard color on white paper, your book will have to be 72 pages. So for books that are text heavy, this isn't a problem. But for someone who's writing a children's book with a lot of illustrations, it can be difficult to get to even to that 24-page mark sometimes. So even self-publishing is not without its problems. For one thing, the learning curve for setting up your pages to meet all of the requirements for self-publishers like KDP, Lulu, BookBaby, or Ingram Spark is what inspires many of you to seek out the help of people like myself and Rose to help you get through that morass. We went through it, we learned it, we figured it out for ourselves, and then we realized that we could help others to meet the standards and to get your manuscripts published. If you self-publish or use an independent hybrid publisher, it still pays to get your work into a reasonable state of publishable readiness. And this is because it takes many more hours to set up margins and change fonts after the pages are already written than it does to set them up correctly in the first place. And the bottom line here is that it can cost you money to pay someone else to format your pages when Word makes it pretty easy to do it correctly yourself. But whatever you choose, publishing guidelines are all about receiving manuscripts that are in a highly ready state for getting to the press, either in print or online. The faster your book can get to print, the faster everyone can start to make money. And like it or not, it is all about making money. Creating saleable content takes time. People expect to get paid for their time, and time is money. Writers who follow the guidelines save everyone time, and time is money. Even contests are in it for the money. Either they charge higher entry fees so that the sponsoring organization can get money, or like SouthWest writers, they keep the fees lower and create anthologies to sell and get money. No one is publishing strictly because they love books or love writers. They're publishing because it's a job that converts their time into money that they use to improve their own life, just like any other job. So, how to find the guidelines? Here's some websites. The Writers Market is a catalog of listing for book publishers, magazines, awards, literary agents, playwrights, and screenwriters. It used to be every writer's go-to guide, and I'd be surprised if every single one of you here doesn't have at least one copy of Writer's Market from, 1992 on your shelf, because I know I have several of them. It used to be every writer's go-to guide for finding out what agents and publications were accepting submissions, and there was always one paragraph that they would tell you what to expect for those publishers' guidelines. But times have changed, and the internet and consolidation of some of the big publishing houses has changed that catalog format quite a bit. Also, now these websites that I've shown here and hundreds of others like them can link you directly to publishers that are accepting submissions. And just like I just showed you with Chicken Soup, you can go directly on the publisher's own pages to their guidelines, so you'll know exactly what format to use for submitting. Now, these sites that I've listed, and most of the ones like them, they do require that you sign up for an account with them. There's usually no charge. They just want to send you an email when they get new info. They'll send that to you. They will offer you opportunities for classes to Zoom into speakers. Or many of them will publish writing related articles, and they'll send you an announcement when a new one is up on the site. But what they mostly do is they provide you with a constant stream of ideas for where to submit your work, and all of them come with the links to everything you know to get it done according to that publisher's guidelines. But let's say you've written a book and you're set on getting it published with a traditional publisher. Here's a peek at the guidelines for Penguin Random House. You can go here at penguinrandomhouse.com and you can click through these guidelines on your own. And I suggest that you do that because it's really actually a kind of an interesting study in what the big publishing houses are doing to help writers and what their requirements are. So the first step in Random House's guidelines is to complete your manuscript or your book proposal. What I found most interesting here is that you'll see that there are links. They're the ones underlined on this page. There are links all throughout this to other resources to help you, to help your writing better, to help your submission be better. But most interesting of all is the line that says how to write a book proposal plus book proposal template. Now, this is something that I've never seen before, honestly, a publisher who gives you a template for writing a book proposal that can't, I mean, it can fail if they just don't like your book proposal, but you can't do it wrong. They're helping you to make sure that you cannot miss the guidelines, just fill out their template and do it the way they want it. And I'm not guaranteeing that it'll get read, but at least you'll know that you haven't messed up on that part of it. And I just find that pretty incredible. I would say if you find resources like that, where a publisher is giving you a template, it's a huge leg up. So don't fail to use it. Really do use it. The next step that they have is get an agent. So we're kind of back to what I said earlier. Most of the big houses, their guidelines used to end with, we don't accept unagented submissions. That used to be the big notice for a lot of these big publishing houses. That hasn't changed. It's just that they're trying to be nicer about it and they're trying to be more helpful about it. And in a way, I mean, it's a huge improvement. It's not great, but it's a huge improvement. They have also given you on this page a whole bunch of links to other places to help you learn how to get an agent, lists of agents. They've linked you to Writer's Digest books, which has, it's a resource for finding agents and publishers marketplace. So again, they're trying to give you as much help as they possibly can without saying, sure, we'll publish everything that comes along. Step 3 is to collaborate with your literary agent to prepare your work for submission to editors. I also found this interesting because here they tell you definitively, if you're going this route of traditional publishing, who should be in charge of making sure that your submission is submitted according to their guidelines? And that is your agent. Your agent should be working with you to make sure that all of the publisher's guidelines are met and that there shouldn't be a problem as far as that. Now, you may still have a topic that they're not interested in. I mean, there's 100 other reasons to be rejected, but your agent should be helping you to get over this hurdle. Stage 4 is hopefully landing the book deal. Again, they're very positive, they're very upbeat, and they're very helpful. And I find it refreshing that they're trying to help actually make the process, if not easier, a little more pleasant. So I just wanted to include here this, just because this is obviously a timely topic. This is a it's a website article from Authors Publish. Now, I do have a membership to authors, or a subscription to Authors Publish, which means that their news comes into my email box and tells me all about what they're doing, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. I think it depends on what they have going on. But in the last couple of weeks, this one came into my mailbox, the 7 most common manuscript submission mistakes. And I just want to call your attention to the last line, which is the very first of the 7 most common manuscript mistakes. The submission did not obey the submission guidelines. So this is something actually that a lot of people are talking about. And it just to reiterate, find the guidelines, go through the websites until you find them. They're usually not hard to find, and then follow them. So that being said, we're going to go on to contest guidelines, which truly are a different kind of animal altogether. And there are several reasons for that. Contest guidelines are set for many different reasons than publishing guidelines. They're set for fairness, which is to make sure that all the contestants start on an even playing field. They're set for ease of the judging process. Judges are typically volunteers whose time is valuable, and it's not obviously unlimited. But when a judge has 40 contest entries to read in a short window of time, it's important that that judge is able to get through them as quickly as possible. And another reason that contest guidelines are set is for the protection of the sponsoring group. Excuse me. This would be to protect the interests and the liability of the organization, the publication, the web group, the college or university that's running a contest. One way, though, that contests are similar to publications is that the organizers are typically also interested in making money for the organization. Their guidelines, though, sometimes you can look at the guidelines and you can get clues, even though they may not state what their actual reason is for running the contest. You can get clues within their guidelines as to why they're doing it. If their main reason is to get money, you will typically find higher entry fees and strict rules that, if you read them closely, make it easy for sponsors to disqualify entries without refunds. Some organizations are more focused on educating, and these in the guidelines, you'll find lower fees with strict rules that are based more on perfecting submissions to compliance with the rules of actual publications. Awards in these cases may also be of a lower monetary value, or your awards may just be publication. Of course, there's a broad spectrum everywhere in between, combinations of reasons that people are holding a contest. But I would say that one of the things that the guidelines can do for you is to help you ascertain what might be the main motivation for the contest, if that's important to you. Contests are a great way to get your work out there and sometimes to get your work published, but they do have drawbacks. For one thing, if you're not careful and if you don't read the guidelines thoroughly, you could inadvertently agree to give away valuable publishing rights, even copyrights, to the organizers. Contests have entry fees. Most contests actually don't refund your fees if you're disqualified for failing to follow even one guideline. And most won't tell you that you've been disqualified or why. Some contests have judging procedures that select winners by strict mathematical calculations. and others employ a more subjective process that selects winners by committee. Most contests do work to maintain the anonymity of the contest and the judges. The exception here would be, I know there are a lot of online contests that actually promote that they have a well-known writer, or if it's like for screenplays that they have a well-known producer or even actor who's doing the judging. So you can kind of see that in this case, they would want you to know because they would feel that it gives you more of a reason to enter if this person. But for the most part, there will be anonymity. You can also see that in contests, there are a lot of interests to protect. And so that ends up with a lot of guidelines and a lot of language. And some people feel that it can become unnecessarily rigid. But if you read the guidelines and you're still willing to enter, contests can be a fun way to get feedback on your writing and to garner rewards for all of your hard work. And I am definitely not trying to discourage anyone from entering contests. But if after reading the guidelines thoroughly, you find that a contest has rules that seem disconcerting, I'd say don't enter it. There are plenty of others. For organizations like SouthWest Writers, it's also easy to get on the contest committee and help improve the rules for next year. So keep that in mind. So again, and I think I've already said this, but some of the most common contest rules include entry deadlines. I mean, honestly, they can't hold a contest open indefinitely. And if you miss the deadline, you won't get entered. This is really just like any other kind of contest. Some contests for writing specify a font style. Some have preferred margins and spacing. Again, these are the types of things that speed along the judging and aid in equality between the entries. So let's have a look at those SouthWest Writers Writing Contest guidelines. Now, Dan already went over several of my points here, so I'll try to make new points if I can. And I'm actually not going to go over them in detail because I think it's better if you all use your own fine-tooth comb and read them very thoroughly. It's just a great exercise. So on this, which is the opening page to the SouthWest Writers Contest, right now, it makes it very clear that you will not be able to enter before June 1st. So don't even try. You can push the button until the cows come home and you're not going to get anything to happen. Down at the bottom down on the third paragraph, there's a note about the number of entries. And this is just to let people know that in order really to make any category worthwhile for the organization and for the contestants, there have to be a certain number of entries. So they're just putting you on notice that if they don't get enough entries, that the way that the prize structure works is going to be changed. And then there's the timeline. Just note that entries close on July 7th at midnight. So just know, don't even try to enter at 12:01 a.m. on July 8th. For one thing, it's not okay. This contest has apparently had issues in the past with people trying to get in late. If you read the last paragraph or the last sentence under timeline and awards, you'll see why I say that. And some of these people must have had some interesting excuses. I will say that sending emails or calling the offices or coordinators of a writing contest to ask for exemption from a deadline for any reason is really beyond unacceptable. It's just rude. Don't do it. As the notice here states, enter early while you're healthy, your computer is running properly, and there are no comets threatening. You also, as Dan pointed out, get a discount for entering early. So there's no reason, honestly, for this contest this year, it's been great because we've all known, I think since March, it's been advertised that the contest is going to open June 1st. We've all had months and months to get our submissions ready. So there's no reason not to take advantage of the lower entry fees and to make sure that you're not wiped out by a comet before you get your entry in, because even that isn't an excuse. So here are the sections. Dan showed these to you earlier. You can start to see when you look down through here that many of the categories have different rules from others. So it's important that you pay attention. I would suggest paying attention to at least all of the categories in your section. For one reason, you might find that there's a category other than the one you thought you might be entering that will fit your submission better. But also to make sure that you know exactly what is expected for your particular category. I think the next one is also more categories. You'll see section D here. I'm just going to note that there's a new category this year for fiction for children, young adults. So this one definitely has a couple of new and different guidelines. So if you want to enter it, just make sure that you've read it. One thing I wanted to know when reading it was, do you just enter the text or do you enter the your illustrations if you have them? And I'm not going to answer that question for you because if you're interested in this category, then read what it says. Okay, after that comes the contest rules. So these are not just category guidelines. These are the actual rules for the overall contest. And they start out with no entry may contain more than 3,000 words. This is where you're going to find that word count. You're going to find the details of what fonts to use, how wide or narrow your margins can be for SouthWest writers. They want your headings to be a different font size than the text size. You also have to be careful that your name doesn't appear on the submission, and that is for any contest. Typically, because of anonymity, you're never going to put your name on your submission. Yeah, making sure that you're kept anonymous. I will call your attention to this little line in the center that says, as this is a contest to encourage writers, industry standards in formatting will be followed. So like I said earlier, this is one of those clues to why this group is sponsoring a contest. Of course, they want to make money, but there's obviously a mission here to help educate writers to be able to meet the industry standards. So part of the mission of this contest is to help writers to be able to do that. So these are not arbitrary guidelines. They're guidelines to help guide you to do better, to be able to have an easier time navigating the world of publishing. So don't resent the guidelines. These are good things. The next page explains the judging method to you. And I always suggest reading any contest method of judging, because this is where it's going to tell you how anonymous everything is, what kinds of ways their judges are going to approach your work, how many judges there are going to be reading your work, what kinds of feedback you can expect to get. So this is really boring stuff, I know, but honestly, the judging criteria is a place where a lot of people who might enter sometimes come up with a disagreement because they don't want their work judged in that way, or they feel that there's something that is untoward there. So read it so that you can make an informed decision of if you want to pay your fees and enter any contest. This contest, you'll see down here, publication. This contest also has an element of winners getting published in an anthology. So they need to know upfront that if you're entering, are you giving permission for your work to be published in the anthology if you win? Now, it says that you can refuse, but there's a deadline on that too. It says if a winning author sells first rights to another entity prior to publication, it is their responsibility to inform Southwest writers before August 1st. So you can say that they're going to be able to publish your work, and then let's say you get a book deal or you get it into Chicken Soup, who wants the first publishing rights. Now, here's the thing. This is another clue to how this group is trying to help writers, because they don't want the fact that you've agreed to let your work go into this publication, this anthology, to keep you from actually making money from your writing. So they've created like an exit door just in case you need to pull your work from the anthology so that it can go into Chicken Soup and you can make money. Again, this is a kindness, but you won't know about it if you don't read these guidelines. So read them. The last part tells you about the online submission process. And I'm going to leave you to read that. But basically, it just says that you must submit online, that if you attempt to drop off submissions at the office or send them in by mail, you will not be getting into this contest. So go to the website, read the guidelines now before you have to enter. And then on June 1st, because you've already written your great story, you'll be all ready to just upload. The entry fees down here at the end, Dan showed you, and we already talked about that. So I'm just going to, this is the website for entering the contest. You don't need this entire long web address. If you just go to southwestwriters.com right now, there's a big header right in the middle that says writing contest. Just click on that and it will take you directly to these pages that I just showed you. It's really very easy. And once the submission opens up on June 1st, southwestwriters.com, click the heading, it'll take you right to where you need to be. So I think that's all I have for this dull topic. I've taken this selfie of myself giving this talk. I will be posting it to the dull women, and I hope that it's not too exciting to qualify. Thank you all very much. And I do have time. There's plenty of time for questions. So if anyone has any.